I want to talk now about a phenomenon that can arise in meditation that is called Makyo. Makyo refers to hallucinatory experiences that can happen when people meditate. In some cases it can be just outright hallucinations, sensory hallucinations. In some cases sometimes it can be a mixture of memories and imaginings, or memories and hallucinations. I think that one could include in Makyo a certain, what you might describe as exaggerated passing emotional states that might be accompanied by a sensory hallucination, or perhaps by a combination of sensory hallucination and some kind of shadow memory. The first thing to say about Makyo is that generally speaking, it is a product of some kind of temporary state of powerful stress. I've already cautioned about meditating when you're exhausted, use of alcohol and illegal drugs, overeating. But let me say again, when you're in an extreme state of exhaustion, it's better to get rested before you do formal meditation. If you've just eaten a big meal, it's better to wait a while, digest your food before doing formal meditation. Again, don't mix formal meditation with the use of illegal drugs. And if you use alcohol, be extremely moderate in the use of alcohol. And don't meditate right after having some alcohol. It's really better, it's just a general rule of thumb, it's better to not drink if you're meditating. You save a lot of money too, by the way. Similarly, I've cautioned about not using your will in such a way as to drive yourself too hard in meditation. This, in particular now, I want to say that you save yourself some grief if you don't try to do intense meditation retreats on your own. If you're going to do an intense meditation retreat, we call that a sesshin. A sesshin means to search the heart. And in the monasteries we do these 2 or more times a year, week-long meditation retreat. And many monastic communities offer lay meditation retreats, varying from 1 or 2 days to a week or more. So if you're going to do intense meditation retreats, go do them under the guidance of a teacher and with other people. Don't just do it on your own. Most Makyo can simply be avoided by taking these simple measures that I've described here. But in some cases, some Makyo can arise in the early months or maybe the first couple of years of meditating for some people. As a general rule of thumb, has to say that this is one of the good reasons why it's really important to meditate under the guidance of a teacher. It's hard for me or anyone else to overgeneralize about Makyo because so many different things can happen. I've been a teacher for many years myself, and I have to say that I can never get to the point, I've never got to the point, I never will get to the point where I've seen it all. I keep being surprised by what people tell me about what happens to them when they meditate. And I keep encountering people who experience things that I have never experienced. And it made me wonder, what's happening here? As a teacher, I find that I need to spend time with people, get to know people, and have time myself to meditate on the questions they bring me. If I'm going to offer sound advice, sometimes I need to go to someone else and say, someone has brought me this problem that arises for them. I don't know how to deal with it. Can you help me understand what's going on? Sometimes hallucinatory experiences are simply one of the ways in which the kind of more superficial layers of spiritual pain and confusion kind of boil off when one first begins to meditate. By hallucinatory experiences of this type, we're normally talking about things like experiences of flashing lights or unusual sounds that one knows is, or suspects at least, are not in the world around one, but kind of occurring in one's own head, so to speak. And if one is living in a moderate, sensible, grounded way, one's doing a moderate, sensible, grounded meditation practice regularly, then these phenomena will normally simply disappear after a time. You just treat them like passing thoughts. Don't be worried about them. Let them arise and pass. When my master was a young trainee in Japan, in the monastery where she trained, for a while she wasn't getting enough food. And at least one point she actually had a hallucination of a pie, I think it was. If that happens, that's a message being sent to you. You need some food if you're going to do this. So, deprivation, either deprivation or excess, can cause hallucinations, which may actually have a valid message in them. And this is why moderation is so important. Look after yourself and don't be extreme in any direction. Again. Sometimes there may be another reason for Makyo. And I think of this as the kind of cornered ego syndrome. And this is where the meditation is, as it were, threatening to reveal something that one has got pretty deeply buried. The part of oneself is trying to keep buried. And as it were, the cornered ego is sending up all kinds of sensory phenomena to try to distract and obscure some underlying spiritual confusion and pain. If this is so, I'm certainly not saying this is always so, but if this should be so, then all one has to do is just keep sitting through it. Eventually, the cornered ego will relax and stop throwing up the sensory fireworks. Note that I say, if it should be so. I am not saying this is always the case with Makyo. Sometimes it may be the case. If it is, sit through it. Just treat the arising sensory hallucinations as passing thoughts. Don't think, oh, I'm seeing bright lights, I'm enlightened. Just, oh, bright lights are going off. Isn't that nice? Continue meditating. Let them go when they pass. And they will pass. Sometimes there are genuine memories that include encapsulated spiritual confusion and pain that may, it's not always the case, but sometimes they may, as it were, introduce themselves into our consciousness or be accompanied by sensory hallucinations of some kind or other. You might have a sensory experience of taste, for example, where you taste something that you haven't tasted in 30 or 40 years. You know, the favorite soup that mother made. You may hear something you haven't heard in many years. I've sometimes been sitting and all of a sudden I've heard, just like it was playing in my ear, something from a recording I might have listened to 30 years ago. Knowing what I now know about how memory works, this makes sense to me. And I recognize that sometimes such an experience may be a prelude, or part of a prelude, to a deeper unfolding of memory. If that should be the case, again, sit still. This is just an arising thought, form of experience that will pass. Don't push it away, don't hang on to it. Don't try to make something of it. Don't analyze it. Let it arise, let it pass. It can't hurt you. In the last section of these talks, which will be on some of the further and deeper teachings of Buddhism, I'll come back to the issue of a mixture of memories and hallucinatory phenomena and sometimes imaginative elements that can happen sometimes to people. But this can go well beyond what we normally think of as Makyo, and I'd rather leave it for later discussion.